Okay, good morning, everybody. Uh, Welcome to the first public day of our Rail Passengers Spring Meeting, Day on the Hill, National Day of Action. I see that the participants are streaming in. That's good. And meeting scheduled for today. I think everyone is going to learn a lot and be in great shape for your congressional meetings tomorrow and for the rest of the week. We are in a moment of real potential transformational change in the way that we fund passenger rail in this country, and we have to seize this moment. This is probably one of the most important spring events we've had and congressional meeting weeks that we've had, certainly in my tenure and possibly in really the past few decades. This is a real moment. So I could not be more excited by our lineup today. You're going to hear from the very top of Amtrak this morning as they outline their vision for the future. And this will help you, we hope, understand better the landscape and be prepared for your meetings with our friends in Congress, whether you've scheduled them for tomorrow or for a little later this week. We're very lucky and privileged, really, to be joined this morning by Bill Flynn, who is the CEO of Amtrak. He became the CEO April 15th of last year. And he had been with Atlas Air, which is global air freight. And as you guys know, I spent 26 years at Aviation Week, so I'm very well familiar with Atlas Air. So Bill really has a lot of expertise in logistics, charters, and sort of large scale mobility. And he also did spend some time with CSX. We're very, very thrilled to have Bill with us here this morning to kick us off. I'll hold on my other introductions until Bill finishes. So good morning, Bill. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Jim, and thank you for that kind introduction and for the invitation to speak here today. You know, the support from the Rail Passenger Association and from all of you individually has been incredibly important to Amtrak throughout our history, and especially so during the past trying year. You know, we're excited here at Amtrak. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary on May 1st, and the RPA celebrates its 54th anniversary, I understand, just a few weeks later on May 18th. And perhaps the May anniversaries between our two organizations may be coincidental, but what's really important and really critical is the support that we've had from the RPA throughout our history, and the advocacy that we've been enjoined with and making on the Hill and with the administration for many years. You know, as I was preparing to join Amtrak, I was doing background research, as you might expect, and of course on May 1st, 50 years ago, our first train rolled out of New York onto Philadelphia. And at that time, you know, no one really knew what to expect, I guess. And in my research, I found a quote from a New York Times article who quoted an unnamed high official. We were quoting unnamed high officials even back then, from the Department of Transportation, who stated in this January 26, 1971 article, I'm going to read it, quote, "The purpose of this bill creating Amtrak is to get the passenger service off the backs of the railroads, run the wheels off the existing equipment, and then put an end to passenger trains in our country." Well, here we are today with more than 17,000 dedicated employees. Our national system connects over 500 destinations across 46 states, the District of Columbia, and 3 Canadian provinces, and we're operating over more than 21,000 miles of route. And certainly, the unwavering support of the RPA and its members is an important part of our 50-year history. You know, for the last 50 years, Amtrak has made passenger rail service accessible to communities all across America, both large and small. And at 50, we're just getting started. Looking ahead, Amtrak has a bold vision for the future of rail that includes investing in new equipment across all of our service lines and Acela 21s will be delivering soon, and we're about to place an order for intercity train sets. We've ordered locomotives, and we'll be looking at superliners and Amtrak 2s beyond that. We're reimagining our stations and ensuring ADA accessibility. We're modernizing our vital rail infrastructure, leveraging new technology, combating climate change, and expanding our service to enhance the mobility of more and more Americans. And so we believe that Amtrak has a critical role to play in the national transportation and mobility of our strategy for the next 50 years and beyond. As you know, when coronavirus locked down the world, we kept moving. And I think it's important that we all recognize that the majority of our employees, saying goes, every day during the pandemic, and continue to provide our essential services. And they were on the front line every day, opening our doors and getting folks who needed to travel where they needed to go. We created a new standard of travel, enhancing our cleaning practices, placing health and safety above all else, and continuing to work with you to upgrade the customer experience from beginning to end. And we've never stopped improving our service nor investing in our future. And so when customers are fully ready to travel again, we'll be there helping them to get away to one of those 500 destinations, just spend time with a friendly face, perhaps jumpstart their career, and embrace a loved one. As a result of the funding in the American Rescue Plan, I'm happy to report that we're restoring our daily long distance service trains starting in May. And I want to be clear, long distance trains are a vital part of Amtrak's future. And in fact, our corridor strategy is largely built on our long distance network. And Stephen will shortly discuss this element of our strategy and other priorities for our company. Larry Chesler will join this morning to discuss our plans for upgrading the long distance experience. And then our chairman, Tony Kosher, will provide the keynote address today, later in the program, and provide a comprehensive view of our opportunities and challenges. So I thank you once again for the opportunity to join this morning. I thank you for being our customer and riding Amtrak before, during the pandemic, and riding more in the future. Thank you for your support as we made the tough decision to temporarily reduce long distance and state-supported services, which we are now restoring. And thank you for fighting for a better transportation network for our country, our communities that are underserved by rail today, and our cities that do not have the service they deserve. Your support is vital to our success, our mutual success, and there's so much more to be done together. Now, in closing, you're going to hear a consistent message from each of us at Amtrak who are with you here today. So as you speak with policymakers, we ask that you communicate our priorities, our mutual priorities, in order to deliver the future that we all envision. We need fair access. We must be able to access freight rail lines through an efficient and timely process that also determines reasonable capacity improvements. We need on-time trains. Our national network service, especially our long-distance trains, will never reach their full potential unless they operate on time consistently. And to do that, we need to be able to enforce our legal right to preference. And we need funding for growth. Expanding service on new and existing corridors will require greater, and importantly, a more stable funding stream. With your advocacy for these policies, we have a real opportunity to transform our transportation system and connect more people and communities across our country. And so I look forward to working with you to ensure that more communities have access to safe, reliable, and trip time competitive Amtrak service. So thank you again, Jim. And now I'm going to turn the podium over to Amtrak President, Stephen Gardner.
Bill, thank you so much. And just for a note for our attendees, we had originally planned for Bill to deliver his remarks and depart. And I'm told that Bill will stay with us here for a little while during Stephen's talk. And we'll be doing questions with Stephen after his remarks. So thank you for that, Bill, as well. I very much appreciate that. So Stephen, most of you know Stephen, but I have to let you know that Stephen seems to change titles every roughly 8 months or so. So we'll do this again. Stephen was made the president in December of 2020, and he is effectively the day-to-day operator of Amtrak. His roles at Amtrak have been senior executive vice president, chief operating officer, chief commercial officer. He was really part of a lot of Amtrak's expansion efforts over the years, working on the Northeast Corridor, working on capacity issues and so forth. And he has certainly been a wonderful resource for me as I came into the association in 2014, as he has been for a lot of you as well. Before he came to Amtrak, as you know, he worked on the Senate side, Commerce, Science, and Transportation on the Surface Transportation Committee. And so he has a lot of visibility and understanding of what we're about to do this week on behalf of passenger rail in this country, both Amtrak and commuter and expansion services. And I will tell you that Stephen has always been very accessible to me and always willing to take my calls and deal with my questions, whether we've agreed or disagreed. And so I think that's an important thing to highlight for everyone, that Stephen has always been there to hear us and to work with us when he could. So Stephen, I went a little over time, but I wanted to make sure I got that out. And thank you so much for being here.
Jim, thanks so much. And it's a huge pleasure to be here with all of you. And let me start by saying thank you to the RPA for the incredible support, sort of dogged advocacy for passenger rail and for Amtrak. I come to you today as a former NARP member for many years myself, and as somebody who, as Jim mentioned, had the opportunity to meet with the organization many times a year, to be the recipient of your efforts over nearly a decade when I spent time on the legislative side of your advocacy and your work. And I can tell you how important it is and how effective it is at reminding elected officials, their staff, the importance of an intercity passenger rail network for the United States and the role that Amtrak plays, and all the opportunity that exists out there in the future for doing more with rail. So with that, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. We'll do a quick, see here, just a sort of quick walkthrough of some points that there we go. Everyone see that okay? Good. So some quick points that Bill made, I'm going to emphasize here with a few graphics and cover a couple of other issues. And to recap, we're talk a little bit about pandemic and recovery, where we are today, talk about the national network vision we have and our reauthorization priorities, with the goal here of putting the right information in your hands as you're talking today with various folks, and so you've got a good sense of where Amtrak is headed and the kind of work that we are up to in terms of communicating about the vision for the future. And as Jim said, it is a tremendous opportunity. I like to remind everyone at Amtrak that for 50 years, Amtrak employees have been waiting for a moment of a real investment and commitment to the mode and to the corporation. And we certainly hope that that time is upon us. We'll keep acting every day like it is, and hope to see really a new era of investment and opportunity. So in order to get to that new era, of course, we've had to survive through this world-altering pandemic. I need not tell all of you how significant it's been. We've all experienced it. But it's been an incredible journey of perseverance, and really I can't say enough about the efforts of our team. Everyone across Amtrak has pulled together to create a safe and, in fact, enhanced experience across our network. We've been really trying to use this time to improve the ease of use, to create a better experience, so that when we can come out of the pandemic, people experience Amtrak and say, wow, I see some real differences here, and see the relevance of the service and also use this time to try and build new riders, to try and appeal to folks who haven't necessarily taken Amtrak before, and now see the train in a new light, a new option, one that's perhaps more convenient and appealing than flying, for instance, in this time. And we've been able to, in fact, grow our new customer ridership, particularly in some important demographics, with folks who are giving us a shot. So that's great. Of course, we have had to take some very significant, drastic actions in terms of cost reduction and service reduction for both safety and to make sure we were prudently managing the business through this time. But as Bill mentioned, we're on our way back now with both returning to daily across our long distance network and a number of state corridors coming back in slowly and up to full levels here relatively soon. So that's fantastic news. Of course, all that's possible because we had your help in getting really strong support from Congress, about over $3.5 billion sort of extra relief dollars to support Amtrak in this really tough period of time. Bill was just mentioning the other day that we started off April of last year with about 3,200 average passengers. That's 3,200 average daily passengers in April, which should normally be about 85, 86, 90,000 riders in FY19 a day. And we're now up to about 32, 33,000 a day on average, which is great news, but a long way from where we should be. So this congressional and administration focused investment, particularly in FY21, where we received more than double our highest ever annual appropriation, has been essential to giving stability for the company that we needed to pursue the future. And we've started recalling all our employees and returning service, as I mentioned. So let's talk about Amtrak Connects US. This is our vision for a passenger rail network that is designed to meet the needs of this century, that's designed to meet the United States' current regional and national mobility needs, and sets the stage for the kind of growth that we anticipate for the remainder of this century. I'm going to show everyone the map. I know many of you are familiar with this piece of work. This is 1971's initial network. Much of this network is still in place, not all of it. There's some changes, but the amazing thing is when you scroll forward to today's map, just how similar the network is. Many aspects of our network have remained the same. We've added some important service for sure. We've lost some services along the way, but in general, the network is very similar. And yet, look at what's happened since 1971. The United States is a fundamentally different place than it was when we were created, and our rail system has largely stayed the same. So you just look at the population. We're now 333 million or so compared to 207. So my lifetime roughly correlates to Amtrak's, and you can see how many people we've added over that period of time, more than 120 million. And you can see where they've gone. The vast majority of growth has occurred in the South and in the West, more than doubling in those regions. And of course, the population has shifted older. The over 65 population has, again, more than doubled, almost tripled. And the urban and rural split has changed very significantly, so that the majority of Americans by far are in metropolitan regions. And that trend is continuing. In fact, as you see on the right, we're looking at a nation of 400 roughly million people in the late 2050s or so, and continued growth in particularly the South, Southeast, and West. Here's a great picture from some work done in the aughts here of this century about the mega regions. And this anticipates the growth and that continued trends of urbanization across the nation. A lot of this demographic development is not only the result of population increase, but also immigration. And we have seen these trends continue since this work was published in 2008. Really all of the work has roughly been validated by, in fact, actual results. We continue to see the bulk of the population in these major regions of city pairs and connected cities and towns that form across the United States in these clusters. Now you overlay, excuse me, our network on this map, and you can see everywhere we've got the dark lines. We've got, let's call it sort of conventional but high quality, hopefully frequent service connecting some of these city pairs, the kind of basic rail service that you would expect in a developed nation like ours to provide enhanced mobility and alternatives to flying and driving. And then you've got the long distance network, which is the dotted lines here. And that's, as you all know, some places daily service, some places tri-weekly. And the amazing thing is how little capacity and frequency we provide in many parts of the nation, where long distance today, as important as it is, just can't possibly provide a meaningful transportation option with one train a day, sometimes in the middle of the night. And we've left regions without the kind of capacity they need. So at the core of our vision is to bring more trains and service to these communities, to the places that have seen significant growth, to where now very significant numbers of Americans live, but yet Amtrak is but a let's say, small presence, and where there's a lot of opportunity in the density and the economic needs and the population needs to serve these communities with better service. And our vision is to, in fact, over roughly, let's say 20 years, 15 to 20 years, expand a network to provide service in these communities, bringing up to 160 more communities into our network, providing multiple daily trips in about 15 more states, adding up to 30 new routes, 30 plus new routes, and to improve and expand upon the routes we have. All this would allow us to add about 20 million more passengers to our network, helping us to achieve the doubling of our pre-pandemic levels, which has been our goal between now and 2040. Just to put this in sort of stark relief, let's take a look at Texas and Florida versus the Northeast Corridor. Everyone on this call knows the Northeast Corridor service, knows how robust it is, how it's benefited from a legacy of investment prior to Amtrak and through Amtrak's history to create a reliable, highly frequent, trip time competitive service. Population of the Northeast, about 60 million. Now let's look at Texas and Florida. Together, Texas, Florida, and California, about a third of the US population. Incredible states of high population, huge economic activity. In Texas and Florida alone, about 50 million folks. And now let's look at the service. We only serve Texas and Florida with 6 long distance routes, or excuse me, 6 routes, 5 of which are long distance, 1 which is state supported, have 11 daily frequencies, and only 1 state-supported route in that location, and those 2 important states. Compare that to the Northeast Corridor, where you can see 162 daily frequencies, right? So why is it? What is the rationale for serving these 2 population centers? Obviously, Texas and Florida are not contiguous, but together they represent a huge population, and Amtrak's presence, again, very minimal compared to the population and the demand. So what we're focused on is developing intra-regional services in high potential corridors and serving through connections of long distance those regions. Amtrak's critical to this vision because we have the national capabilities and expertise, the installed base, I'll say, that the federal government has invested as the federal government's sort of operating arm, as the corporation established by the government and owned by the government. We've created these capabilities to leverage from that base these kind of expansions and build a comprehensive network that provides not just sort of point-to-point service, but creates the opportunities for broader trips and expanded mobility within regions and between regions. And as all of you know, Amtrak was created and vested with number of unique rights that make Amtrak the quickest way and the most cost-effective way to expand service, particularly the right of access and preference that Bill mentioned, both of which need a little help in sustaining, but serve as the critical basis for growth and improvement of the network. It's, I think, incredibly important to think right now about how uniquely capable and sort of appropriate passenger rail is given the challenges of the country. We are facing a climate crisis that challenges the very fabric of our nation, our infrastructure, and our economy. We all know passenger rail has a unique ability to provide low carbon, highly effective transportation across the nation. We have a situation where across the country, we are asking ourselves, have we provided the right level of mobility and an equitable approach to communities, particularly communities of color, and balanced out the kind of opportunity that transportation can create? And again, passenger rail provides a huge opportunity to expand service using existing infrastructure with minimal community impact. And as you look at that map, you can see there are big parts of our nation that today are left out, that aren't getting the benefit of the service of Amtrak and the benefit of that federal investment. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? And how do we address it? And finally, the economic opportunities that come from rail are well documented and essential, are fundamental to the value we create. We create opportunities for labor market expansion, for new opportunities across sectors, and to help integrate regional economies. There's no better place to see that than in the Northeast Corridor and the Midwest Hub and our California routes, where rail service is integral to the day-to-day operation of a number of businesses and institutions and cultural life. So here's a map. I know many of you have seen this already. This gives you a view of what our vision for the future is. In the blue, light blue lines here, you see future corridors that we would like to develop over the next 15 to 20 years. We think we could get started on all of these in the next 15 years. A really significant expansion in service, though. As you look at all these corridors, there's not a single one that is a surprise fundamentally. I know all of you could look at this map and say, well, yeah, it's quite clear we need service in these sort of places because of the population and the density and the congestion that we experience. Supporting as the foundation for this network, of course, the existing corridors we have and our long distance network that brings together these regions and connects these metropolitan regions to the rest of the nation and to towns and cities in between. Of course, we have a whole series of corridors today that need improvement and expansion. Many of those already have plans underway led by our state partners or in cooperation with our state partners. It's really the states that are critical and have been, along with your support, in growing these corridors, which account for roughly half of our business in normal times. And it's on that firm foundation that we believe we can create a real network for the future, with a lot of focus, of course, in those areas that I mentioned, where there's growth and high population, yet Amtrak is today yet a minimal presence. I mean, look at the Atlanta region as sort of the poster child, Texas, so to speak, or poster child, excuse me, and then Texas and Florida, which are great markets today, not served by any of the level of service that they deserve in terms of population and economy. So moving quickly to reauthorization priorities, Bill really laid these out. In a sense, it's no different than what you all have always advocated for. You know this graph quite well, right? Amtrak and passenger rail has never in our history experienced the level of investments necessary to create a world-class system. We have, particularly in these last 5 to 10 years, benefited from more investment, but that investment is just trying to catch us up from the decades of underinvestment. If we're going to create a modern, effective, valuable system, we're going to need to invest in this network. We've got three service lines, as folks know, our state-supported routes, our long distance, and our Northeast corridor. Each one needs significant investment and a long-term commitment from our federal partners, so that it can, again, fulfill the role and opportunity that exists. With state-supported, we're looking to partner with our states and with other entities, private entities, localities, our host railroads, to achieve that corridor expansion we talked about. There are a bunch of different ways to go after that map, right? We don't have the perfect view about which corridors have to come first. We're looking for partners who are anxious and ready to invest and partner with us so that we can move forward the best opportunities and then build out the map from there. Fleet remains a common need across the network, both long distance and state supported. We're hopefully very soon announcing our move to replace the Fleet 1, the backbone of the Northeast Regional and many state-supported corridors. And we're starting down the path for further procurements on the long distance side. And of course, the Northeast Corridor has a well-known many $billion list of core infrastructure needs just to bring the railroad to a state of good repair. Gateway program, sort of the best example of that, with our big bridges and tunnels needs there. But in addition to that, we have the needs to expand capacity and improve performance, increase speeds, and reduce trip times so that that corridor continue to do more over time. And again, all of these fundamentally require stable funding, a long-term funding source that will allow Amtrak not to plan for next year, not to plan for the year ahead, but in fact to undertake the planning and investments necessary for the decades ahead, to have a stable source of partnership that allows us to enter contracts now, knowing that the federal government will be there to provide its share in 5 years, 7 years, or 10 years. In addition to just that stability, we need to expand that investment. Rail can and should do more. We're, of course, amazed at the proposal by the administration of $80 billion investment in rail. That would create an incredible opportunity for us and our state partners and others to begin this process of growing out the network. Fair access, as Bill mentioned, is core to the existing network and for its future growth. And on-time trains, it's the fundamental aspect of the experience that we sell to folks. First, a safe trip, but next, on-time performance is absolutely the critical element that people are seeking when they pursue transportation. No different really in any mode. Fundamentally, you want to have your expectations met, and one of the biggest and most obvious expectations is the schedule. So we've got to get better. We are seeing improvements in certain areas, but at the same time, we've seen actually increased congestion and worse performance coming as particularly the freight network has gotten busier here over these last several months. So we need your support. At RPA, you've been essential to Amtrak for now 5 decades as an organization, and the next several decades, the future of those decades lies in part in your hands. Can we make the case that Amtrak and intercity passenger rail are core to the future mobility of the nation? I think we can. We've got to focus on these 4 areas and seek your support and partnership over the coming months and year to not only hopefully get the level of investment we need, but then work hard to implement this quickly so that we can deliver value in the near term that supports the level of investment that folks have made, hopefully, in this network. Right? We've got to turn that ambition into results quickly. So thanks so much. It's been my pleasure to be with you, and I'll turn it back to Jim.
Stephen, thank you. Listen, I know we're going a little bit over time. Do you still have some time for us to do a few questions that we've received from our members in the audience?
Yep, sure thing.
Super.
Yeah, we do.
Super. Great. Excellent. Thanks. I very much appreciate that. So, I think, I can speak for really all of our supporters when I say that they're very interested in making sure that Congress actually funds the Corridor Development Program as a way of adding new routes to the network. So if Congress doesn't provide sufficient funding to build out the entire Amtrak Connects US 2035 map, or changes or additions to that map as they may emerge? What are the key characteristics for potential new corridors? Operational characteristics, political combination, that would help Amtrak determine which corridor projects would advance first?
It's a great question, Jim, and I think one that's on the minds of everyone, really, all of our partners, folks at Amtrak. How do we make our decisions around investing here? And first, let me just say our view is that there should be a variety of ways to fund the expansion of the network through Amtrak's national network account. So funds that come directly to us so that we can take the lead, particularly with states who are sort of nascent in this business, who don't have a robust program, who haven't done a lot of planning. And there should be also US DOT grants so that states that have very developed programs can take the lead where we already have existing work underway. And that Amtrak should be a partner, and a flexible partner, to be able to find the right niche to help enable this expansion. So the core things we're looking for as we look out at that map, a couple of points. First, obvious opportunities for near-term expansion are those routes where we today have long distance service and have all of the elements in place: stations, crew bases, the kind of basic infrastructure necessary, but today just run one train a day, or run that one train 3 times a week. Right? Those are places where we believe, in many cases, almost no investment would be necessary, very little investment necessary to start some service immediately. I think of Atlanta as a perfect example: Atlanta to Charlotte, Atlanta, Birmingham, places where we've got the national network in place and we can utilize that asset base and begin new service. But each one of these corridors requires analysis. We've done a lot of analysis to produce that map to find what we think are the right basic ingredients. And those are pretty simple: population, density, economic growth, congestion, connectivity, host railroad infrastructure that's appropriate and efficient. Obviously, willing host railroads are better than non-willing. So we do have a whole spectrum of partners there, but we are looking first empirically. What does the route look like potentially? How many communities can we bring together? What are the existing traffic flows? What are the opportunities? And then we're, of course, looking for the right level of political support, the right state commitments, where we've got great leadership in DOTs already, or in cities already, who have been focused on this. I think both Gulf Coast work, which is corridor we hope to start very soon, and the Front Range are perfect examples of places where there's a strong base of planning and support that sets the stage for, hopefully, quick introduction of service if we can manage it. Now, some of these corridors are going to take a decade to develop in the kind of way that we would like them to develop, because they will take heavy investment in infrastructure and lots of planning, sometimes new facilities, etc. But in almost all cases, we think you can start pretty quickly, relatively quickly, with existing infrastructure, with the fleet we have, and begin that base level of service and grow over time. And that growth may be more frequencies, it may be higher speeds. Some of these corridors should become high-speed corridors over time. And the basis for that decision is, again, sort of empirical, but we can get started with the network we have. And we're going to be looking for those partnerships and sort of excitement on the ground, frankly, and the kind of longer term commitment from communities that will give us a chance of success.
So, Bill, did you have anything you wanted to add, or?
No, I think Stephen covered that pretty comprehensively, and but clearly as well, right? There is absolutely the ability to prioritize where we need to.
Okay, super. So I'd like to then turn, if I can, briefly from corridor development and additional service development in those places to a little bit more on the long distance side. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of interest and activity in expanding service on the long distance side. A lot of our folks, it's no secret, we really believe that we need a daily cardinal, a daily sunset. We'd like to see additional frequencies. We'd like to see restoration of discontinued services, like we're seeing in Montana, the southern route through Montana and North Dakota, Oregon, Idaho, Utah corridor. How does Amtrak view these grassroots campaigns, and is there any interest in supporting them?
Well, Jim, it's a great question, and as you said, this has been a long-term priority for I know the RPA and many of your members, and we share it in terms of getting the real value out of this long-distance network. The network has been static for too long, right? It is in need of adjustments around a number of areas. We think schedules and routing in some cases are things that really could create even more value as we hopefully receive the kind of authorities we need with our host railroads so that we can get more dynamicism in that network. What I would say about the long distance network is fundamentally, right, it's about the investment levels. We've got to make sure that the network we have today can be brought into a state of good repair. That's, of course, fleet and infrastructure and facilities. And then that we have the opportunity to grow into these core regions and provide the level of service that I think, all of us recognize is really a stark omission. Now, as part of doing that, I think we believe that the corridor program should provide an opportunity to invest in places which today are only served by, say, tri-weekly trains, the Sunset and the Cardinal, where that move to daily would create basically the first frequency in some core city pairs. Think Cincinnati, Indianapolis, Chicago, and would help establish that base. So as part of our corridor program, funding to bring those tri-weeklies to daily would be something that we believe should be eligible. And with that comes also opportunities to, again, think about, are there connections between these future corridors and some of our long distance networks? For sure, there are places on the map where you would love to see some connections happen. We could maybe do that with the right level of investment. So I think so folks should understand that Amtrak is absolutely open to the right level of changes that produce value, right? And the produce value in the terms that we understand them, which is ridership and revenue, of course, but also real mobility value, places that we can make a difference in serving communities. And how do we build off that base of network that we have today as we improve it to look for more opportunities? Fundamentally, to me, the corridor growth strategy is about creating that connectivity to the long distance network that's going to help drive those longer trips. Also, Amtrak's interested in pursuing some opportunities today that are in the 209 space, the routes between 500 miles and 750, which we think Amtrak should be able to fund directly because the routes are too long typically and span too many states to try and bring that many states together. And yet there are some great opportunities. Think Pittsburgh, Chicago, for instance, which are sort of longer than typical state supported, but fall underneath the LD limit. So interested in understanding opportunities. We'll be looking at these closely and finding those things that fit well. Core to all of it is that we've got enough investment capacity to be able to improve the network we have and grow it in the right ways, and think about how long distance helps to knit it together.
So I am very conscious of the fact that I have taken more time than I'm allowed to take. You've been very generous with it. I do want to ask both Bill and Steve, and I'm going to start with Bill if I can. I've personally been very excited by what I've seen in the past few weeks, past few months. I feel like there really is something different in the air. I feel like our work has taken on new urgency and new purpose. So there are things that I'm feeling great about, and there's also some things that, frankly, keep me up at night. And so I wonder, I'd like to maybe get what from the both of you. What do you feel, Bill? I'll start with you. What are you feeling most optimistic about? And conversely, what's keeping you up at night as we head into this sort of transformational period in passenger rail?
Well, thanks, Jim. Thank you for the question. And I think it's the right one. I think the starting place for the conversation has to be, the moment we're in this pandemic, and as we start to see really a path to recovery and ultimately growth. Right? It's affected all of us. It's affected our globally, our country, our company, our community. Stephen talked about some of the numbers in terms of ridership and the vaccinations that are coming out. So all of us united in that, right? And that absolutely keeps us, focused and motivated, and we have to be optimistic. To quote a Churchill phrase, right? As we think about this pandemic, we're kind of through the end of the beginning, but we have a ways to go. When he was commenting about perhaps the Battle of Britain, I'm very excited about the momentum in our business, and we can see it. It's palpable, right? It's not only going from 3,000 to 30-something, 32, 33,000 riders a day on average, but our bookings into the summer months we're seeing 40,000 riders a day, 50,000 riders a day, 60,000 riders a day level of demand in the business. So that's really continuing, and I'm excited about our vision. And Stephen just really took some good quality time to describe that. Right, very very simple: better services, new places, more people. And we have, I think, a very clear and a cogent path on how we get there, and it's unifying for us. And I think and I hope it's unified for our PA. And that is, of course, a backdrop against an administration that's excited about the growth in passenger rail as well. We certainly know the president's been a long time supporter, but that and certainly we're hearing that from Secretary Buttigieg. He's told me he's Amtrak's #2 supporter, so I got that. But you look across the administration, Chairman DeFazio's bill and the prior Congress HR2 could serve as the model for how the president's vision ultimately gets enabled in Congress and then moves through ultimately into our services and the investments near term and short term we need to make. I think what keeps me awake at night, I think it's just two things, really. It's the uncertainty about our recovery from COVID, the timing and the pace of it, the efficacy of vaccinations, and are there second waves, are there variants? We're not through it. There's a jagged line recovery. So that's all kind of front of mind for all of us as we start to think about the downside effects. And going forward with all that we've talked about, we talked about our priorities. We have to make tangible strides on access and preference because they're elemental to the growth strategy. Thanks for the question, Jim.
Stephen?
Well, as you'd expect, Bill and I have the same dreams.
We do.
Or lack
we see
of
the
dreams.
world in
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I second wholeheartedly his comments. But let me add to that on the sort of opportunity and risk side. So I do think that we have a moment where we really can articulate the value proposition for rail. There's no way the United States is going to make a difference in climate if we do not change our transportation system significantly. And passenger rail is the most easily deployable way to create real alternatives to that roughly 90% of transportation carbon emissions that come from driving either trucks or cars. Right, there just is no other path. So if our nation is going to be serious, and I would suggest it's an existential crisis that really requires us to be serious, then passenger rail is at this unique moment an incredible tool. So I think that gives me lots of hope about what we can do to help lead really a new sustainable century of investment and infrastructure that simultaneously helps us mitigate the challenges of the climate, but also creates new opportunities and a chance for the nation to continue to grow and prosper for everyone. Well, on the risk side, if we're lucky to be that generation of rail advocates that has this moment come to pass, we've got to deliver. That's the tough part. That's the really tough part, to go from sort of keeping it all together with duct tape and baling wire to suddenly trying to make, in, let's say, a decade, the investments we should have made over the last 5. So we are spending time building up that capacity. And I think this is where, Amtrak has a unique role to play, because with our funding, we can be nimble. We can sort of launch many boats of partnership and be able to flex dollars and time partnerships. The kind of investments we just made, commitments we made with Virginia, is a perfect example of a situation where that opportunity came sort of, to us, thankfully, through the incredible leadership of the Commonwealth and the opportunities that had developed with CSX. But of course, that's been going on for decades. Amtrak started the initial work on corridor development there in the mid-90s. FRA continued into the late 90s and early 2000s, and the Commonwealth has been leading the charge since. And Amtrak was able to meet the Commonwealth in a partnership to what is going to be launching our biggest state-supported expansion in the history of the company. So we've got the ability to be nimble. We've got the ability to make things happen quickly, but it is going to be an incredible challenge. So that keeps me up at night, that if we're so lucky to be the generation that gets to make these investments, making it all happen. But I feel never better about Amtrak's ability to actually deliver there. We've really come very significantly farther ahead than at any point in our time, to have the designs and the capability and the vision and plan and team to make improvements a reality.
So I have to say I share both the optimism and the fears that you do. I think with one additional fear, and that is that we will face obstructionism. I look at what's going on the Gulf Coast right now as an example. If those are the things that I worry about, that we're at this moment, we're making progress, we're ready to go, and then some oddball thing pops up that we have to fight our way through. And so certainly from my point of view, getting my members to lock arms behind us as we fight those issues, that's the thing that kind of drives me up for sure. I have to say, I have several more questions that we received, and that certainly I have, and I could go on for 2 hours, but we are out of time. I wonder if I could ask you gentlemen both to allow us to share the questions with you, and then we can perhaps get the answers back to folks out of the bounds of this session. Would that be okay with both of you?
That'd be great. Look forward to it.
Super. Great. Because I don't want to cut people out of the questions, but I do want to keep us on time. So I really appreciate your giving us the time this morning, both of you. I feel good about tomorrow. I think you've done a great job of prepping our folks for their meetings tomorrow. And I think you've both been very generous with your time. So thank you so much, Bill and Stephen, for being with us this morning. And we're going to go into a short break. I do want us to try to get back by 10. So please scurry off, get your coffee, whatever it is you need to do. I am going to start on time at 10. We are recording, so if you miss a few minutes, you'll have the recording, but we won't wait. So we're going to keep on going, and we'll see you back here at 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
again.